Alright my friends, it's Krebs here, I'm playing some Space Engineers! Welcome to the cable car! Or should I call it more appropriately the chain car? We're gonna call it the cable car because I have a feeling you guys are gonna know what a cable car is and how they work. And it's pretty much the same premise, so we should call it the chain car, but we're calling it the cable car. Just leave it. Alright, so you're using your fighter, you gotta go to work, and you decided to park at your local park and ride, and you're gonna take the local locomotive over there because using your fighter to go that far is just too damn far, and you want to cut back on costs and also not pollute the space environment with CO2 because you're just such a good guy. So you get out of your fighter, you start sprinting over to the locomotive because you realize, oh no, I'm late for work. And so we come over here to this platform, and shit, the platform is a bit low, so we're gonna have to use our jetpack just as you would at the normal train station and hop aboard where you would like to go, but there is no conductor. How are we going to make this work? And why are there no people? This seems kind of fishy. Right, we're gonna activate the car by using the nuclear reactor here. I just don't want to fall off. God damn it. Oh, damn. Okay, we fell off. This already isn't working perfectly. Oh no, we've even fallen below the system. I think it's because this thing is a little bit, it's sort of dented inwards, so that's why I can't really reach. There we go. Perfect. Now what we're gonna do to make this work is we're gonna turn this off. We're gonna put this into positive around 1. We're gonna turn it back on. This is offline mode, so it shouldn't matter. And we're gonna grab this one, go into the rotor here, and we're gonna turn it off. Again, I think this is offline mode, so it shouldn't matter. And around 1 as well, just like what our other contraption or other rotor is. And we're gonna turn that on. So here we go. The cable car has started, and we're being tugged along. So you might be wondering, how did you do that, Krebs? How did you make this thing? Well, I'm gonna explain it to you guys. We're gonna dissect it, take the pieces out, the shiny stuff on the outside, and we're gonna take a look at all the internals in just a second. But the premise is pretty much around how a cable car works. You've got a cable that is pulled in one direction and it's also pulled in another direction. However, I think cable cars, they actually, what they do is like, it's a circle, and you know, the cables, the carts, when they get to the base, they sort of go around and then back the other way. This one is just more so one cable that's being pulled to and fro. So it's sort of like a cable car, if any. Yeah, it's cool. I'll show you guys in a second. But when we pull up to the station anyway. So the main premise behind it, though, that makes it possible is chains. And I think that's like a recent innovation in Space Engineers, and I think it's a big innovation as well because people get creative, and I've recently started seeing them in videos where people are using chains. And so I thought, why not make something like a cable car, something that can be pulled along? Because a lot of times people have made like rails systems that follow a line just like this, but you have to get inside the cockpit and propel yourself forward like a small sort of ship. Whereas this, you just activate the rotors from the nuclear reactors, and it goes by itself. You could literally just get out of the thing and it would just keep on going. So it's almost like you could send stuff along its way and not have to actually be present. This is kind of a small cable car. Right, so we're at the platform, we're just gonna jump off here. And here we go, we're at work, yay! But this is quite a small cable car system. You can make one that's automated, sort of like, as I was speaking, you could just turn it on and the cable would go by itself, the cart or whatever, it could transport whatever. And it could go on for ages, just depending how long you make it. But since this is the first time I've ever made something like this, I decided to make it on a small scale, as a lot of people would do when they're making things for the first time. So mind you, this is relatively small, but also large at the same time, as in maybe I could make this more efficient, but this is the best that I could make it right now. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna bring up our tab over here, we're gonna rip off the top of these buildings here. See, you can already see some of the internals going on. We're gonna rip off the cable car roof over here, and we're gonna take off the one from this house as well, the ceiling here. Alright, there we go. And now you can see the cable car in effect, in its glory. So I'm going to explain to you guys everything about it. The thought process that came behind it, like the design decisions, why I made it, and yeah, whatnot. So when I started this earlier today, this took me the better half of a day to make, which, oh god, it actually took a long time and a lot of redesigns. I started off with this platform here, and I made the rotor, because this is what's going to be pulling the cable, the chain along, pulling it back and forth. Now, I didn't initially have this design, alright? It was actually just like one of these chains. It was like a few blocks. But the problem with that is that it wouldn't guide the chains so well, and what would happen is that it would get really crumpled in, and sometimes that put a lot of pressure on the individual chains and they would just break. The whole thing would break, and sometimes it would have trouble unwinding and whatnot, especially when it started to get more tighter and tighter with more chains. So I decided later on that I had to make something bigger and something more rounded so that these chains can go alongside it. I mean, I could have made it like a big square, but if I made a square, it'd have sharp corners and that would destroy the chains, again, putting pressure on them. So that's why I've got these 3-block long corners here, which is the same length as the individual chains. And that just prevents any pressure going on into the individual chains and prevents them from breaking. You can see a lot of sparks flying right now, but nothing too bad is happening. As you can see, we've got a low RPM. I think that's getting a little bit squashed, but it's a low RPM, so it shouldn't break. And there we go. It's all kept together. This is actually a space station, I believe, and so we've mounted it into the asteroid. And actually both of the stations are mounted to asteroids. That one over there is mounted by this black thingy over here. As you can see, it's connected to the bottom of the asteroid. And we need those in place or else they're gonna just fly. Say for example we didn't connect that blue one to an asteroid. The blue one would just go flying or pull itself in to the red one if it didn't have that, which is obviously an undesired effect. We wouldn't want that. Now, I was sort of thinking to myself, you wouldn't have to anchor this down anywhere, like to an asteroid, because asteroids are immobile and that's why I did it. But if you ever wanted to add this to like a ship, you could totally do it. You could add this into the internal portion of a ship or something like that. But as long as it's all connected inside the ship, then it shouldn't pull each other inwards. It just, they need both of these need some sort of mounting, some sort of foundation or base in which to attach so they're not bringing each other closer to each other. Alright, so that is the rotor that I made. Now when it came to the actual pieces over here at the mouth, I had to make a bit of a feeder, and let's actually rip off the top of this over here as well. And this is a feeder. As you can see, it's got a bit of diagonal pieces, the wall over here, and the reason why I've done that is so that it moves the chain in a direction like this, in a sort of clockwise direction. Otherwise, if this wasn't here, then the chain might be branching out all the way over here off the actual rail or track and then just go onto the track, which is not what we want. We want to feed it in, we want to guide it into place, or else it's just going to be going somewhere we don't want it. A little bit more down the line, we've got the stoppers, and this is going to stop the car from going too far, or else it'll just keep on going and rip right through things. I used landing gear because landing gear, they don't need as much maintenance. As you can see, they sort of go a bit into the car and do a little bit of damage, but not too much. But if I just use normal blocks and they collide into each other, then the stoppers would take damage, and that's not really what we want. Landing gear, they don't take damage unless something is going too fast into it. Now let's take a look down along the line. We've got these windows here. This is more for a style effect, so you can see outside of what's going on. And when you come to the car, what I've essentially done with this is it's like a giant chain piece. As you can see, it's like here, and then it just extends over to the car. And it's basically a chain built, the car is built into a chain, or vice versa, the chain's built into a car, whatever. And it comes out the other side like that. And that just means that we can pull this car back and forward. So it's all one piece with the chain. Now, the thing you have to realize when you're making this chain is that you have to make it all in one go. You can't just like break one piece and decide you want to extend it. It just doesn't work like that, especially down the middle line. It just won't work because you can't connect two blocks together, especially if they're not in the same area together. I've seen it happen sometimes with, you know, just like square blocks. You can, if you disconnect something, you can connect it back up, but if they're not, if you disconnect it momentarily, it wouldn't work. And they can't be brought together. So you'd have to, if you want to extend this, add it onto the ends. This is all just one big piece you have to keep it as. So when you're making the chain, you have to make sure that the chain is actually longer than the entire track. Alright? And that's because, as you can see, you've got the winding happening down there. And if you want to calculate it, then to be specific, it has to be a minimum 1.5 times longer, 1.5 times longer than the actual distance that you want to travel. And you have to think about it a little bit. So imagine if you have the cable going lengthwise. In order to move the car from one spot to the other, it has to be at least half the cable length longer, at least, in order for it to wind up and this thing to be connected over here. You'd have to think about it, but that's what you need. It has to be a length and a half longer than the distance of the actual track system itself. That's what the cable has to be. And so, that's what I made over here. It was really, really rough estimates. And we would come down to this place down here. I've got a phone call. God damn it. Let me just mute that. And then we've got more stoppers. And this feeds on over to the other house, which has another one of these rotors here. And the rotors are pretty much the same. They're not the same size, but it's because it was rough. It really was very, very rough when I was making this. Trying to figure out what size is the best thing to use, but although it's a first attempt, rough and whatnot, it works. And I'm gonna leave this up to you guys to make better. One last thing I want to point out is this landing gear, which is attached to this block here, and also the curve of some of these blocks. You have to keep it something like this, where the landing gear is attached to one block and then it goes down to the next individual chain link. It needs to be attached to one block. Any more than that, and what you'll find is that this becomes a very big pressure point when it starts coiling up. It's gonna start ripping through into other things are gonna be ripping through into this. It needs to be one block big. Alright, oh my god, I'm still getting texts. And so there you go, that is pretty much it. We have made the cable car system. What I've done is attach some nuclear reactors from both of the bases over here to each other, and they're not perfectly in line, and that's because I actually built them as two separate entities. One was a space station, and this was a large ship that was then connected to a space station down there, and that just kept it in place. But like I said before, you could just make this like even in a big ship. It could all be just part of one large ship, and you can make it look a lot smoother, a lot neater. One problem that I've had though, and I don't know how to fix this, is say you've got the car, you can see what it's done to the side of the walls here. When it bounces off the side of the walls, it dents them inwards, and I really don't know how to fix that because I just don't think there is a way to smoothen it out. You can't have something like perfectly a tight fit. It just wouldn't work in Space Engineers. But there you go, guys. That is the cable car in Space Engineers. Now, potential of this system, well, there's actually a lot of potential. This could mean the first elevators being made in Space Engineers. And I know you could have made, like, you know, rail elevators that you propelled by yourself in a small ship or whatever. But ideally, what you'd want is something that you turn on from, say, a nuclear reactor. Just go into the panel, you turn it on and the elevator goes up. Or you turn it on and the elevator goes down. That's all you'd really want, and this system sort of allows it. And what I'm thinking of doing for one of the next videos is actually making an elevator, since we've got this rough idea of how to make a cable car system Now we can probably adapt this to an elevator, make it even more efficient than what this is right now. And yeah. Alright, so just to, for good, good luck, I guess, and good measures. Oh, damn it. We're gonna use the cable car just one more time. We're gonna go in the opposite direction here. So we're gonna turn off both rotors first. And this just gives me assurance that the thing's not going to start going by itself. And when you're actually using this system, you need to turn on both of the rotors. If you turn on one rotor, what you eventually find is that the thing is going to explode. Both of the rotors, they're just going to break themselves. So you need to make sure that both of them are going at the same time in opposite directions and also around the same RPM. So let me just turn on this thing over here. We've got an opposite minus 1.01. It's on, and actually we're going to keep this off. We're going to turn them on at the same time, and this one's going to go into positive here, and just keep it around 1. There we go. And we're going to turn that on. We're going to turn this one on, and now the cable car will work. There we go. So you might have noticed I put it just to 1. You can put it higher if you want, but don't do it too high. Because the way that this car works, it's sort of a bit jittery. If it goes too high, then the whole thing will go crazy and haywire and start breaking itself. I think a maximum I've done was like 10 or 15 RPM. You'll have to really test it out by yourselves. But as you can see, the cable car, it works. It freaking works. I don't know if you could make this a bit better so that it doesn't bump into the sides all the time. Maybe you could just make the sides bigger or something like that. I don't know. Something. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this. This is Krebsy, and I'll catch you guys later.